Welcome to the second clip of the motorcycle ride. We're on the Taralga Road between Goulburn and Taralga still, and even in this clip, which will run for another 17 minutes or so, we won't reach Taralga. That won't be until the third clip, so if you're hanging out looking forward to seeing Taralga, then you've got to wait for the third video. I should warn you that Taralga is only a small village. It's not very big and there's not a lot to see there, but we'll talk more about that when we get into the next clip and closer to Taralga. Now, in the last video, I talked about my bike and gave you a bit of an idea of what sort of bike I have. Hopefully, you watched the linked video so you could see the bike if you didn't know it. I also talked a bit about my camera, so you've got a bit of an overview of how all this works. I don't have a very sophisticated setup. In other words, I don't have a microphone which I can record directly to the footage as I'm recording it. I record the audio using a voice recorder on my computer later and relying on the microphone, internal microphone on my computer to be able to pick up my voice. That means that sometimes it's a little bit soft, but hopefully you can get the gist of what's happening and where we're going and what you're seeing and so on. I don't intend to drone on all the time and talk for the sake of talking here, because the idea is for you to enjoy the footage and to enjoy what you're seeing rather than just listen to me talking. But I think it's worth pointing out at this stage that the section of the road we're on now seems to be pretty well maintained, and it's reasonably wide, and there's markings down the middle and markings on the edges, and the shoulder seems to be in pretty good nick, so if you need to pull off the road you can. I make that observation because there are some sections coming up that aren't as well maintained, and there are places where there are patches on patches and the footage gets a bit jumpy because of that. And as I commented on in the last video, I think this road is probably maintained by the various councils. In this case, it would be the Goulburn Mulwaree Council, and I think it's the Upper Lachlan Council that are responsible for the road, but they mostly get their funding, I guess, from the state government because it's not a road in a village or a town for which they raise rates. It's obviously a connecting road or a trunk road or something like that. All right, so we're moving on towards Taralga, and the area around Taralga was first explored, so I'm told, and according to signs on the road, by a chap called Charles Throsby in or around 1819. So the colony was still fairly young, bearing in mind that Australia or New South Wales as a colony was not settled until 1788. Now, I don't want to get into any great debate about invasions and all that sort of stuff. I'm just trying to give you some perspective on how quickly after 1788 people came to the Goulburn region and started exploring the region. Charles Throsby obviously liked what he saw and realised that the land around here was quite rich agriculturally, and the soil was good. And in fact, part of the area around here came to be known as Richlands. I think originally it was two words, rich lands, but over the years it's just become called Richlands. It's good soil, and most of the activity, farming activity that goes on this land is wool, sheep for wool, obviously, but also there is some beef cattle, and like any farming activity, it's seasonal and it can be quite hard work. But I think this is good land for farming. This section we're on now, as you can see, has got some guardrails, and it looks like it's been some work recently to maintain the road and keep it in good condition. It's a bit hard to see from the video, I guess, because of the speed at which I'm going, which is only about 90 odd k's an hour. I'm not going that fast, but it's a bit hard to see. The land around here is quite green at the moment and very scenic. But because I guess we're going through it fairly quickly, you don't get that vision so much from the footage, unfortunately. Not a lot of traffic uses this road because not a lot of reason to go to Taralga. It's, as I said, it's a little village. Not much there, but I'll talk about that as we get closer to it or in the next clip. Beyond Taralga, as I think I mentioned in the first video, you can go to Wombeyan Caves, and then on to Mittagong, which is closer to Sydney, or you can continue to Oberon and then Kelso, Bathurst, Mudgee, Lithgow, that sort of area. I should say that's a great road to ride from Taralga on to Oberon. It's all sealed now. There's some really good twisties for the motorcyclists and good places to get your bike leaning over and going through the bends and so on. But also it goes down into some fairly deep valleys and quite a lot of wildlife on that road as well. It's not a road you'd want to ride at night. You want to be very cautious between dawn and dusk. A little while back, I should have mentioned we would have passed over the Tarlo Bridge and the Tarlo River. I'm not sure what the standard in Australia is for something being called a river rather than a creek, but there would be a sign on it that would have said Tarlo River. As I mentioned earlier, there are some locality signs on this road, one of which says Tarlo. Now, I talked about my bike and so on, so now I guess I can talk a little bit about safety gear. I don't want to come across as the safety police, but when I ride, I have a full dry rider jacket with all the armour in the shoulders and the elbows. I have dry rider pants with armour in the knees and the hips. And of course, wearing a helmet is mandatory in Australia in all states and territories. And I also wear gloves. Now, that doesn't sound particularly remarkable, I guess, but I have seen, especially on American motorcycle videos, sometimes fellows riding bikes with shorts, sometimes riding with joggers. I forgot to mention I've got full, not sure what the brand is, but they're full motorcycle boots. I see these American guys sometimes wearing joggers and shorts, T-shirts, no gloves. Some states don't have mandatory helmet rules, I'm aware of that, so it's a matter of personal choice in some cases. I think, I understand that some of them live in places like Florida where it's quite hot, and I'm sure you can get cool, practical safety gear, Kevlar-based gear like Kevlar jeans and jackets, that kind of thing that will keep you reasonably cool but still protect you. I noticed that some of these guys have spent more on the ink on their arms and legs than they have on safety gear. And I figure that, if they go down, let's hope that we never do. But a nurse once told me that motorcyclists are referred to by nurses as organ donors on wheels. So that if you go down, all of that money that you've spent on ink's not going to look very good after the gravel rush that you're inevitably going to incur. And I'm of the view that if you can't afford the safety gear, you can't afford the bike either. I guess it's a matter of, as I said, I don't want to come across as a safety police or telling other people what to do. But I do think when you're making videos, you assume that other people are going to be watching them. Otherwise, why would you be making them? And whilst you personally may feel you're an experienced and competent rider, not everyone who's watching your video is going to be an experienced and competent rider. Maybe they're not necessarily going to copy you. I don't want to go with the monkey see, monkey do thing. But I feel that we all have a bit of an obligation as riders to talk about safe gear and encourage other people who are riding to wear the gear. As I said, I always wear it, and I don't allow anyone on my bike without having their own safety gear. Fortunately, I don't have people on my bike very often. My wife used to go on it a bit, but she's not so keen any longer. Always have safety gear. Now, as you can see, this section of road is fairly long and straight, so it's a good chance to sort of open your bike up if you want to and find out how fast it can go. I'm not particularly interested in that part of it. I'm more interested in enjoying the ride. So I don't know what the actual top speed of my bike is. I've never bothered to find out. But it's a matter of, again, as with riding with safety gear, there's things to do with when you're riding. You ride to your own ability, ride to the conditions of the road and the weather conditions, and ride to the capabilities of your bike. And you might have a one of those sports bikes, or crotch rockets as they call, that can go like the clappers, but that doesn't mean you necessarily need to do that all the time. And if you're on roads that you're unfamiliar with, it's sometimes best to ride a little below the posted speed limit just for your own safety. If there are people behind you that get their nose out of joint, well, that's their problem. I mentioned earlier that the agricultural land around here is mainly used for wool, grazing for wool, but also beef cattle. But along this road to Taralga and along the section from Goulburn to Gunning, and then from Gunning through to the Federal Highway, you'll see, I hope, a lot of wind turbines. I can see them fairly clearly as I'm riding along, but they don't always show up on the footage. I don't want to get into an argument about renewable energy, but Goulburn and the district around is notorious for being very windy. When I first came to Goulburn about 40 odd years ago, somebody told me it was the windiest city in the world outside of Chicago. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it certainly is very windy in winter. And it seems only logical that if farmers can make some money by leasing their land to people who want to put wind turbines on their land, and that can create some energy, then that's a good thing. It's good for the farmers because it supplements their income. It's good because it creates clean and green energy. And I acknowledge that some people find the wind turbines a bit of a blight on the landscape. I personally find them quite imposing. And I do understand that some people get concerned about birds being injured by them. I'm not sure what the percentage or what the figures are on how many birds actually fly into wind turbines every year. If you listen to the people who talk about the whomp, whomp, whomp sound that's made by the turbine, you think the birds would be able to hear that and not be affected by it. In any case, they are there, good for the farmers to make a few extra dollars from them. And there's a string of wind farms along this range here. And as I said, along the section from Crookall through to Gunning, or Gullen through to Gunning, really. There's also a wind farm between Gunning and Goulburn, and then from Gunning coming towards Gundaroo, and then Gundaroo to the Federal Highway. You might have noticed along the sides of the road there are lots of pine trees, which I think were planted for windbreaks, but there are also poplar trees, which I guess were also planted as windbreaks, because I don't think they're native to Australia. They are very beautiful when they're covered in leaves in the spring and the summertime. In the autumn, when the leaves are changing colours, they're also very beautiful, but now they're just tall sticks, tall sticks with lots of twigs hanging off them, looking quite bare. So I don't think they're very effective as windbreaks at this time of the year. Being an agricultural area, farmers have to be wary of all sorts of things that might affect their animals or their crops or whatever. Coming up a little on the left-hand side, there's a large sign on the side of the road which warned about serrated tussock. I don't know anything about farming, but I know that serrated tussock is a noxious weed of some sort. And there are signs along lots of the roads around Goulburn warning about it. And farmers are obligated to either eradicate it from their properties, I think, or at least report it and take part in programs to eradicate it. But there's also some restrictions on the movement of stock between areas where there is serrated tussock and areas where there is no serrated tussock. Most of this part of the ride seems to be coming up onto the ridge that's at the top of the, bringing you out of the Tarlo, I guess it's out of the Tarlo River Valley, although it's not a very big river. It seems to be a long climb up out of it onto a high ridge that then looks over some really beautiful green country that's good, as I said, good farming land, and the view is quite spectacular. You probably don't get to see it as well on the footage here because of the speed we're travelling at, and the way the camera works. say if you're thinking of travelling this road, there is petrol in Taralga. If you're thinking of leaving Goulburn and heading up to Oberon and so on, there's certainly fuel in Oberon, but there is also fuel in Taralga if you needed it. It's a bit of a section of the road where you can see some patches on the patches and where the road surface seems to be a bit uneven. Although there are guardrails on either side, so I assume there's been some recent road work to install those. They look pretty new. Still some sections of the road that are a little bit uneven. Okay, we're coming up towards the end of this video clip, so I'll again say thank you to all those who have been watching, and promise that the third clip where we will get to Taralga will go up fairly shortly once I've managed to put some audio to it and some commentary to it. If you have any feedback, by all means offer it. Have any suggestions about how to improve the quality of the audio? Can't do much about the video now because it's shot. It's just the quality of the audio. I'd welcome those. Any suggestions about how to do that, I would welcome. Again, I'll say thank you for watching, and hopefully you'll enjoy the next clip when it's loaded.